Hey everyone, welcome to a special Nat Daddy show. We're having an interview. It's been a while since we've had one, but we're like to welcome JM BRANDT back to the show. I do believe you're probably our first interview as well, actually, that
Oh,
couple
is
of
that
years
right?
ago. Yeah, because that's when we did the first book together to our first cover with some Swamp Dogs. So it's
Right on.
it's been a while since you've been on, but I wanted to get you on because you do have the new book out. I reviewed it on the show earlier this week, just yesterday, The Swallower of Shades. I was looking forward to this book because I am a fan of both horror and western, and this kind of has a blend of both. But
Yeah.
before we start talking about that, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, where people can find you, and all your wonderful stuff, and
Oh, okay.
then go into the book if you like.
All right.
Go,
Plug time. All right.
go for it. Plug time.
I'm
It's basically a whole plug just for you.
okay. All right. I am JM BRANDT. You can find me online on Instagram at j.m.brandtt. You can find me on Twitter, sort of, at mrjmbrandt, but I'm in danger of jumping ship because uh, the views have gone down to next to nothing. I don't know what happened with the algorithm there. So I have a threads. I haven't really posted on there, but you can search for me. I think it's the same as the Instagram handle.
Cool.
Yeah.
And now tell us about your brand new book here.
Sure. So my new book is called Swallower of Shades. It is part one of a four-issue anthology series. So it's four one-shots that are coming out monthly. Me being the first, each one is done by a different writer and different artist. But I worked with Tom Napolitano, who previously had credits as letterer mostly, and mostly with DC, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out he's a fantastic artist on top of being a fantastic human being. So um, working with him was really cool. It is for a publisher called Dead Sky Publishing that just recently got in the comic books game after several years as a publisher of just fiction.
Oh wow. Yeah, I
Yeah.
never heard of them before for seeing that. And even when I was looking it up online, one site or one place had it listed under as like multiversity or something like that. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, so which was weird because I thought it's the Dead Sky. So I don't know about that, but I did see definitely the Dead Sky. Um, I did not know that the other one shots were not written by you. I thought all of them were going to be written by you. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, I can vouch for all the other ones. I have read all of them.
Okay.
They're all really good in their own special way. Very different take. So the thing that ties them together is they're all splatter western one shots. They're all 24 pages. They're all black and white. But how we approach the concept of splatter and western is very different for each of them.
Oh, so they're
So
not part of the same universe type of thing.
no, no,
Oh,
they're
okay.
all their own. Yeah, mine has sort of. I'm sure you mentioned it in the review, and we can talk about it a little. But
Sure.
mine had a narrator sort of holding the hand of the reader through the book,
Mhm.
and the other ones do not have that. The other ones are just straight narrative stories. So
Cool.
yeah.
Well, jump into yours. Tell us a little bit more about yours. I read it, and when I read it, it made me feel like I was watching like classic '50s Twilight Zone.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely. So one of the things that I did as a writer was I wanted to play with the convention of the narrator. So I made it very Rod Serlingish. So that's where you get your Twilight Zone vibe from.
Yep.
Just like in Twilight Zone, the narrator addresses the audience directly. But I like playing with. Um, sort of the meta narrative and everything. And so I like the idea of having the narrator sort of existing as this omnipresent figure that can interact both with the audience and with the characters in the story. And so, it was something that I felt was really fun and novel and something that you don't really see in books. But at the same time, it was really helpful for me as a writer because putting that kind of a story and fitting it into 24 pages is tough. unless you have some sort of narrative device to fill in the gaps. So having somebody speaking directly to the audience and explaining things away to you so I don't have to show everything really helped with that.
Yeah, being 24 pages, it is people think that's a lot, but when you're trying to tell a story, especially with pictures, that really
Mm-hmm.
is not a lot to work with, and it is very fast paced too. Um, what are people thinking about it being black and white? Because I know I myself, I knew it was going to be black and white, but I forgot until I opened it again. I myself am a fan of black and white, especially when it comes to horror stuff. I find that's
Mm-hmm.
where you get the most eeriness, with your itchy lines and your scratchy lines and all that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
have you heard reaction wise anything like that, or are the other one shots black and white as well, or?
Yeah, they're all black and white, and most of the reactions that I've had have been positive. It reminds people of old Tales from the Crypt comics and
Yep.
creepy and eerie, and all those pre-code and classic horror comics, and that's really what Dead Sky was going with, or going for with going black and white. Um, I have heard a couple complaints just because people, you have some people that don't want to watch black and white movies because they're
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote boring, or
For sure,
the same thing with like
they feel like they're
uh,
being ripped off.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Or
Yeah.
it's the same kinds of people that are like, oh, I don't want to watch a movie with subtitles because it's too challenging, or
Yeah.
like I automatically think it's dull.
Yeah.
Newsflash, it's not dull, and it's disgusting. I mean, I try to make it disgusting at least. So, it's all the shock that you're going to get from a modern comic and more. It's probably a little bit more on the Avatar comics side. Like I definitely leaned a lot on uh, reading Crossed when making this book, and trying to keep the gore obscene,
Yeah.
uh, for lack of
Well,
a better word.
we've talked all about the book. Tell us the story now about it, because
Oh
I don't.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess people might want to know that. So the pitch line that I give at conventions and signings and stuff is, it is a story about a mummy in an old west freak show and the sheriff investigating the murders.
Yeah, that's what I said too on the show. I said the circus owner wins the new attraction in a poker bet, and yeah, everything else is pretty much exactly what you said there. And yeah, that's what it is totally. Without giving away any kind of
Excuse me.
spoiler endings and stuff. Yeah, you what did you have this originally from the beginning, or you pieced it together and then added more to it, or was this like right from beginning to end? You had the story already.
It's kind of interesting because so the way that the book came about, period, is Steve Wands, the letterer for Swamp Dogs, a longtime comic person, was tabbed as the co-publisher for Dead Sky, and he said that he wanted to start doing splatter westerns because when this publisher was doing fiction, they became famous for combining splatterpunk horror and westerns in their novels. They used to be called Stygian Sky Media, was the name of the publisher back in the day, and now
Okay.
they're publishing everything under Dead Sky. So he asked if I would be interested in writing one of them, and I jumped at the opportunity because it sounded like a lot of fun. And he said, so throw some pitches at me. And so I spent maybe a day or two thinking of just different little hooks that sounded promising to me and sounded like something that I could write a 24-page story about. And he singled out a few as being, his favorites. Um, that one happened to be my favorite also, and probably the first one that I wrote. Um, and we decided to go with it. So as far as the development of the story goes, all I had was the hook. All I had was Mummy in a Freak Show. And then I started thinking, okay, so what happens? What would happen? What do I want to see happen? And more importantly, I kept thinking about the splatter part of it. And I was like, okay, and how do I make this as gross as I can? And so it's sort of it sort of fell into place for me. It's really tough to describe the writing inspiration or the writing process sometimes, because basically it's just me sitting around and thinking about it. Like, so half of my brain will be working on the story, and then half of my brain will be watching a movie or playing a video game or, sitting listening to music. And I'm just, even in the shower, I'm just like constantly thinking, like, okay, well, what would happen if this happens, and what would happen if that happens, and
Right.
how would this fit together? And um, eventually, it all just kind of falls into place. Like, if it's almost like if you were shaking a box of jigsaw puzzle pieces, and then, in if you had an infinite amount of time to do it, it's sort of like the monkeys and typewriters doing
Yeah.
Shakespeare at
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
point. It's like eventually all the puzzle pieces will magically just fall into place, and so it's just me shaking the box until everything falls into place.
Well, I know you're a big horror nerd because even your shirt gives that away too. But are you a bit of a big history buff too? Because there's this book, and I know with Swamp Dogs and that too. Kind of time period pieces in that. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, honestly, that's more a coincidence than anything. I am I a history buff? Not really. I do appreciate other periods of history. Honestly, with historical pieces, I always told myself that I would want to do sort of historical periods and places that were not commonly used.
Hmm.
In fact, growing up as a kid, I had a violent reaction against Westerns in general. I was like, oh, I hate Westerns. They're boring. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, well, I hate Westerns, but I love Tombstone, and I love The Unforgiven, and I love Magnificent Seven, and I love this, and I love that. And then by the time I was done, I listed like 50 Westerns that I loved. And I was like, I guess I don't hate Westerns.
Do you know where's a
So,
great place to catch all kinds of cool westerns? Is on
where's
Tubi.
that? Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tubi's been one of my best friends for a couple years now, especially around October. I do this horror movie challenge called Hooptober that I totally failed doing this year. Um, in spectacular fashion too, because I was writing reviews for a horror website called Horror Geek Life,
Hmm.
and so I was reviewing all the movies for Hooptober, and I only got to like 9 or 10 before Halloween came around. So
Well, there's a ton of horror movies on Tubi as well because I was doing the
yes,
same thing as well.
yeah, no, there's some really good ones. I don't like that there are commercials, but it's hard to argue with the price.
Sure,
So,
free.
yeah.
There's that one I saw there that I was going to watch on Halloween, but decided wait to closer to Christmas because it's more Christmas themed. It's Hell on the Shelf. Did you see that one? Where it's like
No.
a possessed Elf on the Shelf doll.
Okay.
Yeah,
No. I haven't heard of that, but
yeah.
it sounds interesting. I'd give it a shot.
I think Tubi
There's
made that
always
one.
Oh, okay. There's always room for more Christmas horror, in my opinion.
Sure.
But going back to what you said about time periods and everything,
Yeah.
it just both of them seem to suit the subject matter.
Mhm.
And this one with a western, it was given to me as like, oh, let's make a western. So, I didn't really have say in it. Although I guess I could have made it a western in spirit and moved the location or updated the time period or something. But it just seemed more fun to set it in the old west. And then with Swamp Dogs, there's a lot of Civil War era stuff in it,
Yeah.
but it is a modern day comic book, or it
True.
does take place in the modern day.
Right. My next question is, I know this is just a one shot, but do you see any more, maybe any of this kind of sequel to this story or a more building upon this kind of freak show?
Yeah. Definitely the thought has crossed my mind. In fact, at San Diego Comic Con, I ran into Joseph Schmalke, former publisher of Black Caravan,
Hmm.
and he and I were talking about the project, and I said, "Oh yeah, I have this one shot coming out." He said, "Don't ever call something a one shot." I I said, well, why is that? And he said, because if it goes well, why not do more? Why end the story there? Why limit yourself? And it got me thinking. It was like, oh yeah, like I don't want to spoil the ending or anything, but there
Right.
are a number of ways to spin out of it and continue the story, and I'd be very happy to do that. It could go in a variety of ways, and if the demand is there, I'd be happy to consider it and do something with it for sure.
Yeah, I totally thought that too at the end, even though there is a definite ending to this. It's not like a finite ending type of thing, right? So
Right. Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What is there? I wasn't able to find any other covers for this online. Did you have any other covers for this, or?
No, when it came time for them to do the publishing and everything, it's a small operation, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that Steve uh, himself was more concerned about quality of content. He
Mm-hmm.
was concerned about bringing in the right people, bringing in dependable people, people that he trusts, and making sure that they could deliver product on time. And for whatever reason, things came so fast at him, and the schedule for everything came up so quick that he didn't really have time to navigate the idea of variant covers or retailer covers or anything. But I've put the bug in his ear, and I am working with them, with the publisher as a part-time rep for stores. And I've gotten a lot of feedback. Hey, if you guys had a retailer incentive cover, we would have ordered X number more.
That's cool.
We loved Swamp Dogs, or we loved the concept of a splatter western. We would have loved to have done a cover, that kind of a thing. And so I've been in his ear quite a bit about it, and I think it's something that you can expect pretty soon. The other series that has come out from Dead Sky is called The Case of the Bleeding Wall. It's written by Joe Lansdale and Casey Lansdale,
Okay.
and they sold out of issue 1 and 2 pretty much immediately. Joe Lansdale is like a huge name in horror, so
Mm-hmm.
it kind of makes sense. And I think that they underestimated the amount of interested parties in it. And so I know that they're going to go do a second printing of that. And Steve has said that there will be variant covers for that when it comes out. So,
There you go.
um, you know, there's always a possibility. The splatter westerns seem to be doing pretty well. I wouldn't be surprised to show up in a second printing for that. And I don't know how much demand there is for variant covers of a second printing, but if there is, I'll find it and I'll work with it.
Well, just the fact there's a second printing, that's a variant cover right there. That's the way I see it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's true.
yeah.
That is true.
What was the print run for the Swallower of Shades? Do you know, or?
I honestly don't.
Huh?
I know that I bought 300 copies myself, so I know that it's more than 300.
That's because there's only this and the one other series from Dead Sky so far.
So they
Under
started
the label, I should say, like.
right. So for comics, they started out in September, and it was The Case of the Bleeding Wall #1,
Mm-hmm.
and then a one-shot standalone called The Left Hand Path, which was written by Scott Bryan Wilson, who's a very talented writer. He did True Cult for IDW. He did Pennyworth for DC. And it's fantastic. It's so good. Like I cannot recommend that book enough.
I will check that one out because I like True Cult.
Yeah, no. Left Hand Path is the way that I've been selling it to people, and I'm just like, I'll grab a stranger on the street by the shirt collars and be like, read The Left Hand Path. And the way that I describe it is the most mind-bending, dark, heavy metal magazine story that you can read from the late 70s. The art is very singular. It's Ken Knudsen does the art. It's like this very painterly sort of artwork, and it's just a very high concept, dark sci-fi horror one shot. So they landed in September with those. October was my book and Case of the Bleeding Wall #2.
Okay.
And then both of those are going to continue. I think Case of the Bleeding Wall is 4 issues also.
Okay.
And I don't know what comes out after that, but I know that they're lined up for another 2 years with stories. So
wow. So is everything that Dead Sky does black and white, or just the splatter one so far?
No, just the splatter ones so far.
Okay.
Matter of fact, Tom, who did the art for Swallower of Shades, is the colorist for Case of the Bleeding Wall.
Oh, okay.
So again, a Renaissance man, right? He can letter, he can color, he can do line art. It's pretty fantastic. If he ever decides that he wants to try his hand at writing, I'm sure he's good at that too.
But when you start,
don't tell him that, because I want him to draw my stuff.
That's what I was just going to say. Then it takes him away from your stuff.
Exactly. And we are working on another project together. So
and that leads into my next question. Do you have any other projects or stuff coming up that you want to talk about, or is it all still too early? Or
a lot of it's really hush hush. I'm in talks with a couple different publishers about a couple different things. What Tom and I are working on together is actually just going to be a sort of like a self-contained 8-page pitch story that we're going to be sending to a couple of the bigger publishers. You know, and trying our hand at that. You know, I think it might land, but you never really know. I'd be happy to have it at Dead Sky also, but you know, I might want like something with a little bit higher exposure for now. And that one it's going to be really fun whenever it comes out, wherever it comes out. You guys are going to have a lot of fun with it. What else am I doing?
Are you got any more cons this year? Or are you done for the year for cons?
No, I think it's December is LA Comic Con. I will be there. I don't have my own table, but I will be appearing for sure at the table or the booth for Encased Comics. And then I'm talking with a couple other shops that I've either, you know, been very friendly with or had a Swamp Dogs cover with or something, and they'll be hosting me too. And I'll reach out to Scout. I don't know if they have a booth or anything, and it's been a while since the Swamp Dogs has come out, but they might still want me there, maybe.
That's cool.
Otherwise, I'll just be walking the floor, but I'll be there, and I think that's it for the year. And then I actually just dropped the money for my own table at Monster Palooza. So it's a horror convention, but that's honestly, as much as I love comics, that's where I feel a little bit more welcome is at a horror convention, just sort of given the slant of all my books so far.
That's pretty cool. Awesome. Yeah. Well, if you want to give one last plug to your book and where everybody can find you in that, go for it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so it is called Splatter Western One Shot Swallower of Shades. It is available at your local comic book shop. If they don't have it, you can always contact me directly, and I can point you in the right direction, be it online or directly through me. You can find me on Instagram at j.m.brandt or on Twitter at mrjmbrandt, Mr. JM BRANDT.
Awesome. And we've had your cover up on the screen here the whole time we've been interviewing. So
okay.
I wasn't sure. I forgot to tell you that. Sorry.
That's okay. It's just like right in front of my face. Like you don't see my spot.
No, it's me, you, and the cover there. So all right, everybody. Thanks for JM for coming out again. Hopefully we can have him on again soon for other projects next. It sounds like he's got some neat stuff brewing in the works. Otherwise, we will see you guys all later. Take care.